Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Nathan and today we are doing our first class overview of the new updated classes from the 2024 Player's Handbook. And in this video I'm going to be covering the new and updated Barbarian class. I make these videos about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition typically every week on either Saturday or Sunday, depending on my schedule. I've been a little busy over the summer and things and have been a little off, so I'm going to be trying to get back to a weekly schedule going forward. But let's go ahead and jump into this video. So here is our agenda. I'm going to be covering the kind of class overview and what I believe the role of the core Barbarian class to be. Importantly, in this video, I'm not going to be covering in detail any of the subclasses. I'll give kind of a brief little snapshot of what the options are in the 2024 Player's Handbook, but I'm not going to dive in deep into any of their class features. Then we're going to go through level by level, and I'm going to talk about all of the class features from level 1 level 20. I'm going to note anything that has been a big change in those areas. Then I'll talk a little bit about multiclassing the Barbarian, and then I'll kind of summarize the 2024 Barbarian as a whole and give it some ratings across a variety of categories. All right, so class overview and role. The Barbarian at its core is a strength-based martial, and what they're really designed to be is a bruiser, so they're designed to both give and take a fair amount of damage. They're also excellent at skills in their niche, and this is something that is going to be new for the 2024 version of the Barbarian that the 2014 version did not have. All right, here is the full class feature table of the 2024 Barbarian, and so I'm going to highlight things that are new and things that have changed. So these things in blue boxes here are things that are new features. The entire weapon mastery column and feature are new. The Barbarian has received a new feature called Brutal Strike that replaces Brutal Critical, and that improves at those same levels. Now, in terms of things that have been changed, everything I've put a box around here in blue has changed. So Rage has seen changes, Danger Sense and Reckless Attack have seen changes, Primal Knowledge has seen changes, Feral Instinct has seen changes, Relentless Rage has seen changes, Persistent Rage has, as well as Primal Champion, as well as the number of rages available to a 20th level Barbarian. So let us jump into our class feature discussion. So the core Barbarian, their primary ability is defined as strength in the 2024 Player's Handbook. Now, this is something that hasn't changed, but it is something new they're noting, and this is just an easier way to show what ability score you need to be able to multi-class with a Barbarian. The Barbarian's hit dice is a D12, again, unchanged. And their saving throw proficiencies are Strength and Constitution, again unchanged. They get 2 skills from the following list: Animal Handling, Athletics, Intimidation, Nature, Perception, and Survival. Again, this is the same as the 2014 rules. And they're proficient in simple and martial weapons, as well as light armor, medium armor, and shields. And these are all the same as the 2014 version of the Barbarian. Now, in terms of their features that they get at level 1, let's start with Rage. And Rage is kind of the core thing that makes a Barbarian a Barbarian. And while I haven't copied the text word for word here, I've paraphrased it a little bit into what are the most important things. So at this level, we get 2 rages per long rest, and our rage bonus damage is +2. So you can enter your rage as a bonus action if you aren't wearing heavy armor, and you regain 1 expended use of rage whenever you finish a short rest. And this is actually a new thing. Before, your rages only came back on a long rest, so this is an important change. While your rage is active, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and then on any attack that uses strength, whether it's unarmed or with a weapon, you can deal bonus damage on hit. That's currently +2. Importantly, on 2014 rules, this required melee attacks. However, now it requires any attack that uses strength. So importantly, you could now throw weapons and still benefit from rage damage, and that's actually a pretty big deal. You also get advantage on strength checks and saves. That hasn't changed. You can't concentrate on or cast spells while you're raging. Again, that hasn't changed. And duration. This is something that is new. So your rage lasts until the end of your next turn, and it ends early if you put on heavy armor or become incapacitated. However, you can extend the duration for another round by making an attack roll against an enemy, forcing an enemy to make a saving throw, or by taking a bonus action, and the max duration you can have your rage going is 10 minutes. So some important things with the new 2024 version of Rage. they've closed the heavy armor loophole. So before, in the 2014 rules, you could still rage while you're wearing heavy armor, but you were blocked from receiving any benefits from it. However, some subclasses had benefits while you were raging that would still work while you were wearing heavy armor. So they've closed all of those loopholes, and you basically can't rage in heavy armor at all, which is intended. Again, recovering a rage per short rest is actually a really big deal, and it makes it so that the Barbarian is going to have access to rages throughout the adventuring day. It also makes Barbarian a potential better multi-class, because specifically this means that you can now you can be much more free with rage uses with other classes if you have this. Also, another important change is the ability to extend the duration by taking a bonus action. Means that you could potentially rage out of combat for 10 minutes, and this is actually going to become important later with some of their later features. Another cool thing here is you can potentially, because your rage can last for 10 minutes, you can potentially extend a single rage to last for multiple combat encounters because you can maintain it in between combat encounters by taking a bonus action. So overall, I really like the changes to rage, and I think it makes it so that you're going to have it much more reliably, and it opens up a wider variety of builds that you can actually use as a barbarian. The next feature is unarmored defense. So this is a feature that hasn't changed. So while you aren't wearing any armor, you can calculate your base armor class as 10 plus your dexterity plus your constitution, and you can use a shield and still gain this benefit. And again, I think this is still more of a ribbon feature like it was before in the 2014 version of the Barbarian. That said, there are some use cases for this feature for some specific subclasses. Some of them have features that only work while you're not wearing armor. All right, the last feature here at level 1 is weapon mastery. So you get mastery with 2 weapons, and you can use the mastery properties of 2 simple or martial melee weapons of your choice, and you can swap one of these out every time you take a long rest. Now, the weapon masteries available in the game are Cleave, Graze, Nick, Push, Sap, Slow, Topple, and Vex. I'm not going to cover in detail what these do, but importantly, some of these like Push and Slow and Sap and Topple have kind of control effects, whereas Cleave, Graze, Nick, and Vex are all damage amplifiers in one way or another. So generally speaking, this feature, and this is something that all martial classes in the new 2024 rules get, it gives martials more ability to do control and makes them better at using weapons than other classes that are casters. And I think this is overall a good thing and something that's very helpful for the new Barbarian. All right, moving on to level 2, here's the text for the new danger sense, or at least what's important. You have advantage on dexterity saving throws unless you're incapacitated. Now, this is a small, slight change. This is actually a buff. Before, it was against effects you can see, and now it's just all the time, unless you're incapacitated. So again, a small quality of life change there. The other thing that we get here is reckless attack. This is the text. When making your first attack roll on your turn, you can decide to attack recklessly. Doing so grants advantage on attack rolls using strength until the start of your next turn, but attack rolls against you have advantage during that time. Now, there's a couple big changes here. First of all, this works for all strength-based attacks, not just melee attacks like it did in 2014. So again, you can recklessly attack and throw stuff. And having a thrown weapon barbarian is a build that's now very possible, and can actually function using all of the Barbarian's features with any Barbarian subclass, and this is a build that wasn't really possible before. Another important thing here is that the advantage on attack rolls lasts until the start of your next turn, which means it works for reaction attacks, and that's also a big deal if you're going to be a weapon user and want to make attacks with something like Sentinel or Polearm Master. It'll make all of those attacks also be at advantage, and that is a big deal. All right, moving on to level 3, we now have a 3rd rage per long rest, and we get our Barbarian subclass. Here are the options that are in the 2024 Player's Handbook. You've got the Berserker, the Wildheart, and the World Tree, and the Zealot. All of these classes have seen slight or significant changes from their original introductions, and the World Tree is entirely new. You can still use old Barbarian subclasses, but these are the ones that are presented in the 2024 Player's Handbook. And they're all quite good and have important niches. Berserker is mostly about dealing damage. Wild Heart has a little bit more utility, and they've got a lot more flexibility than they did. This is the new version of the Totem Warrior, by the way. The World Tree is probably the closest thing we've ever had to a true tank, so I recommend checking them out if that's something that interests you. And the Zealot has seen some changes and rebalances, but it's still a very good, well-rounded Barbarian subclass. Additionally, at level 3, we get Primal Knowledge. So this is a feature that was introduced in Tasha's, but they've ported it over and added some things to it. So the thing from Tasha's that this did is you gain proficiency in an additional skill from the Barbarian class list. That stayed. The new thing, however, is while your rage is active, whenever you make an ability check using one of the following skills, you can make it as a strength check, even if it normally uses a different ability. And these skills are acrobatics, intimidation, perception, stealth, and survival. Now, the important thing is while we have rage active, we have advantage on all strength checks. And our strength should be high as a barbarian. So now Barbarian is really good at all of these skills because we can use our strength for them. And that's something that Barbarians didn't have before. And this is that ability to use your rage out of combat that's actually important. Because now you can rage and use a bonus action to keep your rage going for 10 minutes, and you can be really good at a bunch of skills during that time. So if you need to sneak in, the Barbarian can rage and have advantage on stealth checks and make them with their strength instead of their dexterity. Overall, a really cool feature, and I'm really excited to potentially play a Barbarian that actually is useful out of combat and contribute on the skill front. So this is a much needed change and will actually have a big impact when you're playing a Barbarian at the table. All right, moving on to level 4, we get a third weapon mastery, and we gain the ability score improvement feature for the first time. And this says that you gain the ability score improvement feat or another feat that you qualify for, and you get this feature again on levels 8, 12, 16, and 19. Now that said, they called 19 the epic boon in the book, but it's essentially just an ability score improvement feature. The epic boons are feats that have a prerequisite of character level 19. This is the standard feat schedule for all classes. Now, they have pretty heavily reworked a lot of feats, but one of the most important things is now all general feats give a stat increase of +1 to a specific stat. I still think Barbarians want to go a damage-focused build, so you're probably going to be using either two-handed weapons or dual wielding, and so things like the new Great Weapon Master are still fantastic. The new Polearm Master is still really good. And if you're going to be a dual wielder, you probably want the dual wielder feat. So overall, I feel like you have a little bit more choices now, and it isn't so much set in stone of which build is the best, like it was in 2014 when you were just Polearm Master, Great Weapon Master, and you're done. All right. Moving on to level 5, we get extra attack. This is the same as before, 2 attacks per action. And we also get fast movement. Our speed increases by 10 feet while not wearing heavy armor. This is the same as before, no changes there. Moving on to level 6, we get our next subclass feature, and then our rages increase from 3 to 4. Usually the level 6 subclass features are pretty good and are worth taking on most builds that are going to use Barbarian. Moving on to level 7, we get Feral Instinct. Now, this is a feature that has seen some changes. Now it just gives you advantage on initiative rolls. Before, it gave you advantage on initiative rolls, and if you were surprised, you could act normally on your first turn if the first thing that you did was rage. Now, because they've changed the surprise rules, that second thing is no longer needed, so they've taken it away. Not really a nerf, and having advantage on initiative is always great. The next part is Instinctive Pounce. This is a feature that was imported from Tasha's and left the same. As part of the bonus action to enter our rage, we can move up to half our speed. So this is a movement amplifier and helps your melee barbarian close distance at the beginning of combat, which is a great thing to have. Level 8 is just our second ability score improvement. At level 9, our rage damage increases from 2 to 3, and we get the new Brutal Strike feature. Now, this is a replacement for Brutal Critical, which in my opinion was actually a really weak feature. So what Brutal Strike does is it basically lets you trade the advantage on your reckless attack for some extra damage and a potential added effect. So, the full text here, if we use reckless attack, we can forgo advantage on any one strength-based attack roll of our choice on our turn. The chosen attack can't have disadvantage, and if the attack hits, the target takes an extra 1d10 damage of the weapon's type, and we can pick a brutal strike effect of our choice to apply. So the first option that we get at this level is called Forceful Blow. We can push the target up to 15 feet straight away from us, and then we can then move up to half our speed straight towards them without provoking opportunity attacks. Cool thing here is you can push regardless of size, which is a big deal. And then we have Hamstring Blow. We can reduce the target's speed by 15 feet until the start of our next turn, and only one Hamstring Blow, the most recent one, can apply to a target at a time. So if you have multiple barbarians, you can't go hamstring, and get a minus 30-foot speed. Now the cool thing and what I like about this, at this level, mathematically, this is typically a slight damage loss to do because you're foregoing advantage. So you're basically giving up a little bit of damage for a potential control effect. And this is something they've added to a lot of the martial classes where you can trade damage for control. And I think overall this is a great change, and I like it better than Brutal Critical, even though it's less damage potentially. Another cool thing here is you can stack your Brutal Strike with mastery abilities like Slow, which reduces movement speed, or Topple, which can knock enemies prone. And so you can do some pretty interesting combinations here to potentially control enemies. And this is something that Barbarians really lacked before. Once you got to these levels, Barbarians were basically all about dealing damage and had pretty much no way to control or debuff enemies. But now they will have that. At level 10, we get another subclass feature and our fourth and final weapon mastery to have at any one time. Moving on to level 11, they get Relentless Rage, and this is something that was kept, but they've made a change to it. So what this does is that if you drop to 0 hit points while your rage is active and you don't die outright, you can make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. Barbarians are proficient in these, so you probably will be able to pass a DC 10 con save. And on success, your current hit points becomes twice your Barbarian level instead of 0, so that would be 22 at this level. Each subsequent use increases the DC of the check by 5, and it resets to 10 after you finish a short or long rest. So in order to die outright, the only way that can happen is with massive damage, which means the amount that you would go negative is equal to or greater than your maximum hit points. So before, this just set you to 1, which meant that if you got hit again, you would have to make another check, and it didn't really work that well. But now with that heal to twice your Barbarian level, this feature is much better and much more reliable. It should let you last an extra hit or 2 before you have to make the check again, and that might be enough time to finish your enemy off or potentially escape. So this is something that will essentially, hopefully, buy you at least one more turn. Still not as good against enemies that have a large multi-attack or if you're getting swarmed, but it's still an effective thing, and I like the changes here. At level 12, it's our 3rd ability score improvement and our 5th Rage Prolonged Rest. At level 13, we get improved brutal strikes. So we now, this is instead of the 2nd rank of brutal critical. So we now have 2 new options that we can pick in addition to Forceful Blow and Hamstring Blow. So we get Staggering Blow. We can give the target disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes, and it can't make opportunity attacks until the start of our next turn. The cool thing here is that you can use this to set up your casters or to land a control effect. And this is a powerful support and control ability because you can amplify your allies with this. The other option here is also a support ability. Before the start of our next turn, the next attack roll made by another creature against the target gets a +5 bonus to the roll, and you can only apply 1 Sundering Blow bonus per attack roll. So if you had multiple barbarians applying this, the ally wouldn't get +10. Cool thing here is you can help an important ally land a big hit, like say a Divine Smite off a Paladin against a high AC creature, or like an important attack roll spell. Overall, I like this. This gives you still have the option of exchanging damage for a control or support effect, and it's actually really nice to have. Moving forward to level 14, this is our subclass capstone feature. A lot of these are quite powerful, but since we're not covering those in detail in this video, I'm not going to cover anything super in detail here. At level 15, we get Persistent Rage, and again, this has seen some changes since the 2014 version. So what this does now, when we roll initiative, we can regain all uses of Rage, but we can only regain them in this way once per long rest, so even more rages. And then our rage always lasts 10 minutes without us needing to do anything to maintain it, and it only ends early if we receive the unconscious condition. So being incapacitated alone does not end our rage, and the other thing that will end our rage is donning heavy armor still. So now our bonus action is freed up. Our rage always lasts 10 minutes, even out of combat. And if we take a crowd control effect that incapacitates us and doesn't knock us unconscious, we keep raging and retain all the defensive benefits thereof, like the damage resistance and the advantage on strength saving throws and strength checks. This is really nice, and honestly is a good thing to make your barbarian more durable, especially because barbarians are historically weak to crowd control effects, and losing your rage before sucked, and this will make it so you don't. At level 16, our final rage damage bump happens up to +4 damage per hit, and we get our 4th ability score improvement. At level 17, our rages increase for the last time from 5 to 6 per long rest, and we get improved brutal strikes again. The features in the book are named the same thing, so I just called this rank 2. So what this does is now the extra damage increases from 1d10 to 2d10. So it's actually worth using just as a damage increase now in a lot of cases, depending on the enemy armor class. And then importantly, we can now choose 2 different brutal strike effects to apply at the same time. So now we can do hamstring plus push, or forceful plus hamstring, and all sorts of cool things and combinations you can do with those 4 different effects, and you can mix and match them. Really powerful. I like this feature overall way better than Brutal Critical. At Barbarian 18, we get Indomitable Might. This is something that hasn't changed. What this does is if our total for a strength check or strength save is less than our strength score, which will probably be 20 at this point, we can use that score in place of the total. Now, the cool thing here is that even though this hasn't changed, because of Primal Knowledge, now our minimum for all of those skills, so acrobatics, intimidation, perception, survival, stealth, when we're raging is probably going to be 20. And so that makes you even better at skills. It kind of sucks that this isn't until level 18, but this works great with the new and updated Primal Knowledge feature. Pretty powerful, should be pretty fun. At level 19, we get our 5th and final ability score improvement. Importantly, the epic boon feats are now available, and you can choose from those. I will be covering those in a separate video. Finally, at level 20, we get Primal Champion, the class capstone, and this actually has seen one minor change. What this does is our strength and constitution scores permanently increase by 4 each to a maximum of 25. Under the 2024 rules, it was a maximum of 24. The reason they've increased it to 25 is that a lot of all the epic boon feats increase your cap for your ability scores above 20. So if you got an epic boon and then got this and you were already at 20, you could potentially get to 25. So that's the only reason for this change. Importantly, one of the other things that barbarians used to get at level 20 was you had unlimited rages per long rest, and they have removed that. I think that's probably a fine thing to do, and honestly isn't going to be meaningful at most tables, but it is an important change to note. All right, let's move on to talking about multiclassing the barbarian. So the minimum stat requirement you need to take a level outside of barbarian or take a level in barbarian if it's not your first class is 13 strength. And if you take a level in barbarian and it's not your first class, you get proficiency with martial weapons and shields. Importantly, you don't get proficiency in any armor. And these things have not changed since the 2014 rules. This means that if you want to multi-class a barbarian build and you want armor, you should probably start with a level of barbarian to get that proficiency. Now, in my opinion, barbarian goes best with fighter and rogue if you want a multi-class. These are the same classes I thought were best with it before, but these are actually even better under the 2024 rules. This is because the short rest recharge on rage makes it a much more reliable resource, especially if the class that you're multi-classing with already recharges on a short rest like fighters do. Also, the fact that rage and reckless attack both work with thrown weapons and on out-of-turn attacks, this is a huge buff to the barbarian rogue combo. So if you don't know how the barbarian rogue combo works, so the requirements for rage and reckless attack now are that you attack with strength. That's the only requirement. The requirements for sneak attack with rogues are that you attack with a weapon that is either ranged or has the finesse tag, and you have advantage on the attack roll. So if we make an attack roll using strength with a finesse weapon, whether it's a melee attack or a thrown weapon attack, we can always have advantage thanks to reckless attack, and we can apply rage damage. This means that the Barbarian Rogue has a very reliable way to proc sneak attack, and this is actually a really cool multi-class overall, and especially with the new primal knowledge, makes you even better at skills. So the fact that reckless attack now works out of turn means that it's even easier to get out of turn sneak attacks with this combo. So overall, these are probably, in my opinion, the best two classes to multi-class with Barbarian by far. Now, some other ones that can work, I think Artificer and Ranger, as well as Blade Pact Warlocks, are also good options. You have to kind of tweak the build a little bit because you will need to be strength primary with all of these. Under the 2014 rules, I also had Paladin on here, but that said, I had to take Paladin off, and that is simply because they made Divine Smite a spell, and you can't cast spells while raging. So the old combo where you could smite while raging because the 2014 Divine Smite is a class feature, that no longer works under the 2024 rules because Divine Smite is a spell. And so there's quite a bit of anti-synergy there, so I wouldn't recommend using Paladin with Barbarian anymore. I also briefly want to mention Moon Druid. This is something that was a popular combination under the 2014 rules, combining a few levels of Barbarian with a few levels of with mostly a Moon Druid to apply the rage damage reduction with the wild shape extra hit points that the Moon Druid had. I honestly don't think this combination is as good under the 2024 rules, mainly because of the changes to Moon Druid itself. They've made some significant changes that I'll be covering in a future video, namely its temporary hit points. You don't put the hit points of the beast on over your character. Also, they've changed a lot of how the beast's stat blocks work and how much of those you actually take on. Plus, we haven't seen the 2024 monster manual yet. Additionally, Moon Druids can actually cast while in wild shape, at least a specific subset of Druid spells. And so this combination could work. I think we need more information to figure out how well, but I'm not sure I would recommend it over going a pure Moon Druid under the 2024 rules. All right, it's time to summarize and give the Barbarian class some ratings as a whole. So first up is offense, and this is kind of how I measure the Barbarian's ability to deal damage. And under the 2014 rules, I gave them a 3-star rating, and I give them a 3 out of 5 still. The issue that Barbarians had under the 2014 rules still remains, and that is a general lack of damage scaling at higher levels. That said, Masteries and Brutal Strikes do help a bit with this, although again, we're exchanging damage for control. And so the issue that Barbarians have under the 2014 rules of basically falling off after or plateauing after you get to level 5 or 6 still remains and is still an issue for them. Next up is defense. I gave them a 3 out of 5 under 2014, and I still give them a 3 out of 5 here. They have seen some improvements to their durability. I like the changes to Relentless Rage and Persistent Rage, but some of their high level and kind of core issues still remain. Namely, you get hit a lot as a Barbarian, you still take a lot of damage, and you have the issue of poor mental defenses, and those things are things that the changes to the core Barbarian have not addressed. Next up is control. This is kind of how I measure the Barbarian's ability to control the battlefield. I gave them a 2 out of 5 under the 2014 rules, but I'm giving them a 3 out of 5 now. And this is because their ability to control is a lot better, significantly better, thanks to Masteries and Brutal Strikes. You can combine these to actually make a Barbarian that can pretty effectively cripple a lot of different enemies. They were good at grappling in 2014. That said, grappling is a lot worse overall thanks to how they've changed the mechanics of it. It's no longer a contested skill check. It now forces a saving throw from the enemy based on your strength. And so it's not really as reliable anymore. A Barbarian can still be decent at it, but Rage doesn't really help you to grapple anymore. But because of Brutal Strikes and Weapon Masteries, the Barbarian's actually a lot better at control. And some of their subclasses are really good at it, although I don't account for those in my core class ratings. Next up is support, and this is our ability to help our allies. Before I gave them a 1 out of 5 because I didn't have any options, but now I would give them a 2 out of 5, namely because Masteries and the level 13 Brutal Strike options actually enable us to help our allies out in combat, and so these are actually a big deal. That said, it's not a huge amount of support ability. You're not going to be supporting on the same level as, say, a Bard, and it comes pretty late, but it's a lot better than it was before. Next up is skills. I gave the Barbarian barely a 2 out of 5 before because they had some extra proficiencies, but now thanks to Primal Knowledge and Out of Combat Rage, I'm going to bump that to a 3 out of 5. The reason it's not higher here is because that skill set that you can use with Primal Knowledge is pretty limited, and not all of those skills are applicable at all times. That said, you will be very good at those skills. And so, this is, again, a good solid buff and improvement since the 2014 rules. Finally, complexity. And this is a measure of how difficult and complicated the class is to play. Under the 2014 rules, I gave them a 1 out of 5, which is the easiest. This is really a measure of how many choices you have available during character creation and in combat. I'm going to bump that up to a 2 out of 5 here for the 2024 rules. This is because, you've got things to do with extending your rage, you've got weapon masteries, you have advanced tactics like weapon juggling you can use to do multiple masteries on the same turn. You've got different options for brutal strikes and understanding when to trade out damage for control and what armor classes are good to use that at. When it's actually a damage increase is a big thing. And so it's still a relatively easy and straightforward class to play, but it is a little more complicated than it was before. So thanks for watching. This has been the overview of the 2024 Barbarian. I think overall they look a lot better and should be more fun to play and more well-rounded as a whole at all tables. I think if you want a multi-class in particular, I think combining with Fighter looks even better than it did before, thanks to Short Rest Rage, and Barbarian Rogue looks honestly really good and really appealing to me. And the next class overview is going to be on the Bard, probably next week if I don't do a build. So I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.